Hey everybody, welcome to Over 50 Starting Over. Today I'm joined by Elle Hart, and Elle has a fascinating story of rebirth. She went to college, married right out of college, and was a stay-at-home mom for 20 years. And upon her divorce, she had to reinvent herself, and she discovered the Gallop Strengths Personality test, which is kind of fascinating. I hadn't heard about it before, but it's a very thorough, in-depth analysis of your personality, in which she helps people define their own self-intelligence and how they think, their strengths, their weaknesses, so you can tackle new problems and challenges from a different light, from your best strengths and recognizing your weaknesses. I think it's very fascinating. She has a website, feelempoweredeveryday.com. She has a podcast by the same name and a YouTube channel by the same name. She has a book offering and a freebie out there at her website. So I strongly recommend that you check it out. I think she's a fascinating interview, and I really enjoyed it. I hope you do too. Don't forget to sign up at over50startingover.com. Get all of this to your email box as it happens. Please like and share our YouTube video and give us a 5-star rating at Apple Podcasts. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Over 50 Starting Over. And today I have with me special guest, Elle Hart. Elle, I do not have an introduction prepared for you. I'll be honest with you. This snuck up on me. We put this together a week or two ago, and I put it in my calendar, but I thought I didn't have a podcast for today. And then a half hour ago, it came up. Now, but I did my research and I brought you on for a very good reason, that you help people find themselves. It's all about over 50 starting over. You get to an area in life, things are no longer going as you thought they were going to go so swimmingly for the rest of your life. This is exactly why this whole over 50 starting over thing was founded. I could talk about that in a bit, but right now it's about you. And you went through a big life transformation and now you're giving back. Can you tell us a bit about yourself?
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad to be here with you. Let me see. I got married and started my family while I was still in college, actually. So I went straight from school life to mom life. And I absolutely loved it because honestly, being a mom was the only thing I ever knew I wanted to do in life. I changed my major 6 times, so I was not sure what other direction I wanted to go, which was
Let me ask, what majors did you experiment with? Where were you dabbling?
I started in elementary education, and then the summer between my freshman and sophomore year, I was in Michigan. I went to live in New Jersey with a family that I'd never met, and I was their nanny for the summer.
Wow.
And after spending and I was isolated with this little girl. So, and I loved her. She was awesome, but it was a very kind of patience trying, lonely time. And I'm like, okay, I know I want to be a mom. So I don't know if I have enough patience to be in a school setting in a classroom all day with so many kids and then go home and then be a good mom to my own kids. Okay. So that kind of led me to shift. And that's why I also think it's so important for kids to try to get like hands-on experience with what they think they want to do, because until you have, some experience with it's hard to really know what you want to do. So,
well, the thing is about college too and back when I used to work at a small agency in my 20s, I would get people in and mentor them a little bit, and they would ask or talk about what they want to do when they're older. And I'd just say, look, you just have to have an idea of how your brain works. Like, I started out in fine art, then I dabbled in philosophy, psychology, and graphic design. I settled on graphic design. I at least knew how my brain worked in that regard. If you have any kind of business sense, go for the business, put some marketing in there. You're going to do something when you get out of college that you never expected. That's what I mean. You just got to take the edge off of it, because life's not going to, you don't want to know how to make God laugh, make a plan. It's not going to go that way. So leave a lot of wiggle room and navigate with what you're dealt with.
Well, and I would say it's the plan isn't going to go according to plan. if you're honestly following yourself and you're being authentic. You can follow a plan if you're not being you and you're following what your expectations are set on you. Then I think, you find a lot of people setting the plan, following through, doing it, and then they end up near 50 years old and like, what am I doing with my life? I need to make a change because they weren't authentic to who they are through the whole process.
That's probably more common than not.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I went through a variety of changes. Like I said, before I even left for college, I wanted to be a high school counselor, and my high school counselor talked me out of it. He was like, you do not want to do this.
Wow.
And I was so impressionable. I listened to him. So, I had a hard time following my authentic self. I did not have a strong sense of self, which led to all those changes in college. And like I ended up getting married, and we started a family. And I was a stay-at-home mom for 25 years. I raised 3 boys, and it was a wonderful experience being home with my kids. Like anything else in life, there's ups and downs and there's trials and tribulations to all of it. But I was very happy to be able to do that. And then it just so happened that the same year that we were empty nesting, we decided to divorce as well.
Now, did you see the writing on the wall, or did this take you by surprise? Did you instigate it? I don't want to get, I'll only get as personal as you want.
That's okay. It was a little of both, actually. I mean, the first time we went to marriage counseling was, I think, 2 years into the marriage. We always kind of had a bipolar relationship. And, but we both had a passion for wanting to make it work for the kids. Neither one of us grew up in a healthy family. So we really wanted that for them. And so we tried, but it didn't work. And as I think we saw that once the kids were going to be, they were starting to filter out and do their own things, we weren't going to have that glue or that commonality. And we realized that, just the 2 of us maybe really wasn't where we thought we should be in life.
When I got out of college and embarked on my career, it was maybe a year or maybe 2 out of college. But then I remember the morning, my mother called me to give me the news that my parents were divorced, that they were divorcing. And she would always talk about it to this day, like, you were not floored, you weren't shocked or anything. I'll be honest with you. I tell my family not to listen to the podcast so that I can just
right.
speak freely. I don't want that on the back of my mind. But I thought in my mind, why did you wait till now? I mean, I experienced a lot of anger and everything growing up, and it was not healthy. So that's the only thing I thought is, why'd you wait till now?
Yeah. So, my parents divorced when I was 6, and I was very happy that they did.
Wow.
Yeah. My dad was a non-functioning alcoholic, and I was grateful to my mom to take me out of that daily situation. But on the other hand, it was very difficult watching her be a single mom for all those years. And I think that's one of the reasons why I stayed, because I was terrified to go down that same path myself. So I stayed out of fear. And then once my kids were launching, I'm like, okay, it's just me now. I can be afraid when it's just me. I can't be afraid when I have them to be responsible of and take care of, want to love and nurture and focus on their, health and well-being. I don't know if they wish that we would have ended things earlier or not. And none of them have ever really expressed that, but they do respect the fact that we've, decided to go our separate ways, and that I think they see we're both happier now.
Oh,
yeah. So that was happening all at one time, though. So I went from being fully immersed and my whole identity was wrapped around my family to being, all of a sudden, it's just me, and I'm completely independent, and I have no idea what this looks like.
Right. I would think that you would be at least on the border of anxiety attacks. But the thing is too, is you can go into a depression and be so demotivated, and that could be a downward spiral. I mean, you get stuck there. Did you battle that for a while?
Well, the divorce process was a very, very difficult. It was a vindictive process. It did not go easy at all. So there were a lot of blows coming at me. And I told myself early in the process, first of all, one of my girlfriends said to me, you want to keep in the forefront of your mind to walk away with dignity. Keep yourself in a way and behave in a way that you feel like you've left with dignity. And so I really tried to follow that advice. But the other thing I did was I said no 2 bad days in a row. So when something came at me that just took, the rug out from under me, I let myself feel all the feels. I let myself have the emotions. At the time, my youngest son was still finishing up his senior year of high school, so he was still with me. I would get up in the morning, see him off to school, go back to bed, and just have my pity party and vent and whatever. And then before he came home, I made sure that I was up and, looking presentable, and I tried to fake it until I could make it through that process. But no 2 bad days in a row, because like you said, I knew I was going to spiral. If I let myself have a bad day followed by another bad day, that was going to turn into a pattern, and I was going to go into that depression that you just talked about. And there was no way I was going to let myself do that.
That's very strong of you. I was going to ask you how old your youngest was, because it makes a huge difference. Now, if you were in junior high school, then you two both have to be like, we need to salvage a relationship while we have, but turns out you didn't really, for better or for worse now, you didn't really need to, as a priority, salvage your relationship going forward into the future, because your kids were basically of legal age at this point. Now, that may have been a bad thing, because it sounds like it may have made the whole procedure more vindictive.
We had some college things to work out and some things to get through, some stuff with our kids that we needed to work as parents with. But for the most part, we have completely gone our separate ways. We do not have any contact with one another. I just realized early on, for my mental health, that's what I needed to do. I had to cut those ties, because I was not going to grow. And that was why that's why I needed to go, is because I needed to grow.
Well, that's a really good way to put it. I think a lot of people could start relating to this at this point. I really wanted to set the stage with where you were before we get to where you had gone. And I find this very, very interesting. I'm going to just tell you that the birth of Over 50 Starting Over. Now, out of like 223 episodes, I've only talked about it like twice, I think. And it's really, with you, talking to you, it's really worth mentioning how this came about, because we got a lot of parallels here. Now, I never got divorced, but I was probably about 51, about 6 years ago. And I really hit the wall. I was, my career, self-employed, doing online marketing, website development, and that kind of stuff. I was partnering with an old friend who was doing the social media aspect for a few years now. And we had some success, and we had a lot of trials. And I was getting extremely frustrated with myself, as I later found. I didn't realize this at the time. My relationship with my partner of 14 years here, Lisa, was on the rocks completely. And I was battling depression and didn't even know it. And then I got a text this one morning, right on the verge of summer of, I forget what year, about 6 years ago, from my brother. Said something to the effect of, Barry, Mom got in an accident and broke her back.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And that set me reeling. I'm very close with my mother now, and have been for a number of years. And long story short, I had to pack up everything and go out and house sit for it. I could work from anywhere, so that's not a big deal. But I had to watch her dog and cat, along with my dog of that time, and just house sit for that summer. And it was a blessing, because that's the city, the small town where I grew up in, and had all my unresolved issues, that I spent that summer, I'm a huge cyclist, writing around. I only worked like half days, and I wrote around and unwound my mind, and would come home at night, sit in the backyard and write out like lists of what I hated about my life and career and what I liked about my life and career and what I wanted it to be going forward. And I made the determination, and this is a big, strong premise of, we call it 050, that after 50, you should have accumulated, whether you realize it or not, a degree of wealth or intelligence, experience, one or the other, or both, that you can do and should do what you want with the rest of your life at this point. And so I made this list. I realized that I love teaching. I taught online marketing, graphic design classes at the college level for 18 years at that point. And I love the branding part of what I do as a creative person. I like the creative part. I hate chasing technology, which is what I built an identity on, being the tech guy. Not fun. And so I started during that time, that summer, I started a blog called Over 50 Starting Over. I developed the logo that you see now, and I started blogging about topics that were marketing related, but also often not marketing related at all, but just helpful, developmental, self-developmental, about being authenticity. I have an article on authenticity, part 1 and 2, that I developed that summer as I came to realizations about myself and growing, my plan to grow going forward. And so a few years ago, I started this podcast with my longtime best friend from college, Merle. And we just started it and decided, what's it going to be? And like episode 2, I unveiled Over 50 Starting Over. So the blog became a podcast. And that's where it's grown from there. And there's nothing that I would rather do with this part of my life than exactly this giving back. I'm still growing. I'm still trying to grow, and I'm hoping that I can get people to grow with me and overcome these challenges, to see that they have this more of a self-worth in them, to explore it, and to just get a little bit better every day, personally and professionally. So back to you and your turn of events now. So we went through the bottoming out, if you want to say, of going through divorce. You even mentioned insightful things about no 2 bad days in a row. Did you have a degree of mentorship on your side? Did you reach out to anybody or anything?
I was going to a therapist at the time because before the marriage fell apart, I suggested, I'm like, look, we've tried marriage counseling. It has, God bless you, it has not worked for us. So what about if I work on me, you work on you, and then we try to come together and see what that lands us? And he wanted no part of that. So I did it for myself anyway. Also, I was just becoming a part of learning about essential oils, and I joined a team with the company doTERRA, and they are huge into personal development. And that a lot of the things I was exposed to with the personal development side and the empowering feeling of, oh, I have more control over my body than I realized I did. That type of thing all opened up, sort of the horizon of, oh, there's a lot more out there to me and to life than I realized. And I wanted to learn more about that and see where that led me.
Okay. And where did that lead you?
So it led me to, again, divorcing then. And,
Sure.
and during that process, I was a stay-at-home mom, so I didn't have a career keeping me there. My kids were all moving on, so I didn't have my kids to keep me there. There was part of me that thought maybe I should keep the house so that they have somewhere to come home to. But I could tell even in the little bits that they didn't feel comfortable being there with the dynamic having changed so drastically.
Yeah.
So I literally opened up a map and I looked around and tried to figure out, where do I belong? Where should I go? What is next for me by myself, having never done anything alone before in my life.
And you've been in Michigan your whole life, is that correct?
Well,
Except
I
for that
grew
New
up in
Jersey.
Michigan,
Oh,
but I grew up in Michigan, but we raised the kids in the Chicago area. So
okay.
that's where I was at the time. I had wonderful friends and very supportive family. My family was still in Michigan, but my friends there were amazing. But again, I knew I needed something different. And so I opened up the map, and my gut instinct was California, but I'm like, oh, I can't be that far away from my kids.
Sure.
My kids were all still trying to figure out during their college process and first jobs and everything where they were going to belong. So none of them were settled yet where it would be an easy mark to just go there for a while. But in that process, my youngest son decided to attend San Diego State University. So I'm like, done and done. I'm going to San Diego. And he was like, no way, you are not following me to college.
Oh, too funny.
So he was not about it. And I'm like, trust me, San Diego's huge. You're going to be in the campus. I'm going to be way up in North County. It's like we didn't even live in the same city or even the same state.
So you did go
I
up.
did. I sold most of my belongings. Through all kinds of obstacles, I sold the house and I packed up what was left. I went from, a normal family home to a small 2-bedroom apartment, pared down, hired somebody to take my stuff and my dog in the moving truck with him out there. I gave my car to one of my sons because I knew if I tried to make that drive, I would freak myself out, too much quiet time to think. And I would turn around at some point and go back and be like, nope, put me back in my safety zone.
Yeah.
One-way ticket flight. And I moved out to San Diego, and
so expensive though. God, it's ungodly expensive.
You know what though? Sometimes you have to, the price of freedom, right? You have to, I needed that. I needed the beach. I needed the sunshine. I needed the palm trees. I needed just that, the mountains. It's such a beautiful area to heal. And I knew it wasn't going to be my forever place because of not only the expense, but it's so crowded too.
Yeah.
So I just thought this is going to be my healing place. And funny enough, when I landed my first night getting there, I couldn't get into my apartment yet. I didn't have a car. So it just, whatever I had with me, I went on a tram and I went over to a hotel that was near the airport. And I was surrounded with all Southwest employees and me. So they were asking me, are you here on vacation? And so I told them my situation, and they just, roared with applause and hooted and hollered for me and congratulated me. And I just thought, this is such a huge mark for me, because most people, when they hear, they give you the pat on the back. Oh, I'm so sorry. And it's I feel sorry for you and that whole thing. And they didn't do that at all. And I'm like, you know what? This is a sign I'm going to be okay.
That's so cool.
So I held on to that, and I went through all the motions. I rented a car for a few days, and just, all the motions of getting myself set up, trying to figure things out. And I ended up taking a job in a school. I worked in a middle school, and it was kind of a rough school. It was on the edge of San Diego. And I worked security, and I really found that I was connecting with the kids that were having trouble. And I could talk to them in a way that this is, me spending so many years with 3 boys and all of their friends in the house all the time. I mean, football players, wrestlers, like you name it, they were over. And I just had a way of connecting with them and making them feel comfortable. And so I was finding this carrying over into the school setting.
Oh, could you put a year to this about?
This was 2018.
Oh, okay.
Yep. 2018. And then that was a part-time job. So I was told by the court I had to get a full-time job. So I morphed that into an in-classroom position at a different middle school in the same district. And I was just taken back by how many of the kids would tell me that they had anxiety and would pull me outside to, hey, can I talk to you about something? Hey, I'm going through this. And they would open up to me about all of their stress that was going on. And I don't get into their drama. I was not getting into the details of it. I was pulling out more the basic concept of, okay, you're struggling with this. Here's some practical things to think about. Here's some tools. Here's some, even when I was working security with the other kids, I would give them perspective of where the teacher's coming from and help them understand that why their behavior in the classroom was causing such problems. And if you were the teacher, would you like people treating you like that? And so I thought, I really want to make more of an impact than I'm making right now in this position. I was very limited in what I could do. So I started studying emotional intelligence. And I realized that through that process, that's what I was missing all along in myself through all of those years, and why I was so easy to become codependent and lean into somebody else and willingly give my power away, because I didn't feel that sense of myself and that strength in honoring that. So I studied that. And at that same time, doTERRA was suggesting that people took the CliftonStrengths assessment, which used to be known as the Strengths Finders. And I took it, and I took every other personality exam there was out there at the time too, trying to figure myself out. And my biggest thing was I didn't want to repeat what I maybe had contributed to the falling apart of the marriage. It's so easy to point your finger to the other person and say, it's all their fault. They did this, that. And trust me, I did a lot of that during the process.
We all do.
But once the process was over and I was out by myself, I'm like, okay, the last thing I want to do is find myself repeating this situation.
Sure. And because we will, if we don't resolve our own crap, we're going to find ourselves in another relationship that parallels. And then you know what those people do? Oh, you're just like my ex.
Yeah.
Really? What's the common denominator there?
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So I did not want to do that. And I ended up meeting somebody, and we've been in a relationship now for almost 5 years. It's a very healthy relationship. And it is like amazing to me what that feels like. It's
great.
So incredible. But again, I did the work on myself. He had done the work he needed to on himself, so that neither one of us.
Divorcee?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, both of us we're not going to go into that same situation again. So I realized that, like I said, emotional intelligence was, I feel like, the piece that I was missing for all of those years in my maturity. And so I studied that. And then with the CliftonStrengths assessment, the results came back. I found them interesting, but there was no real impact. But doTERRA was putting on a leadership program.
Back up a second.
Yeah.
Because I am not familiar with these terms, doTERRA and the Cliftons something.
Okay.
I've not heard of them before, and I'm kind of surprised I haven't. So can you tell me about them a bit?
Yeah, doTERRA is an essential oil company.
Oh, you mentioned that. Okay, gotcha.
Yep. And that's who I was, kind of opened me up into the world of personal development, because they are so much more than about just selling essential oils or even just using essential oils. They encompass the whole person. That's what opened me up to some of these other things. That was kind of my pipeline, I guess, I see. And through them, I was introduced to not only the CliftonStrengths assessment, and what that is it's used to be called Strength Finders. It's done by Gallop, a guy named Don Clifton. He was a positive psychologist, developed this assessment. And he came to the determination that there's 34 traits that every one of us uses, but we all use them in a different way. So most of the time when you take like a personality test, they put you in a category, some type of box, or you're these initials or this number or whatever it is. This one ranks all 34 traits, and your results are going to be unlike anybody else in the entire world. This is interesting. Impossible.
I know I listen to Jordan Peterson a lot, and he would talk about, and I'll probably get it wrong, but something like about 6 main personality traits. And there's agreeableness versus disagreeableness and some other things like that. And then there's just a few lines to be cross-examined. But 34 traits, that's really interesting.
Yeah. And these are, like I said, we all use all of them, but we use them all differently too. So and Gallup gives a very thorough report, but I felt like it was kind of plug and play, and it really wasn't personalized, and I didn't get a lot out of reading it. But in this leadership conference that I was attending, this guy got on stage and he started talking about the strengths, and all of a sudden I was like, oh my gosh, it all makes sense now, and I totally understand what they mean for me. And so I've been studying him like a hawk ever since. And he is phenomenal. His name is Eddie Villa, and he has a company called Unleash Your Strengths. And so I've been studying everything that he puts out, and I just find that it's very the interpretation and the explanation and understanding them is very natural to me. So I started offering that to other people. Mm-hmm. And so my intention was I thought, oh my gosh, if I would have learned more about myself as a teenager, where these kids that I'm struggling with, if they could learn how they do things best, which is the main point of what this strengths assessment leads you to, is how you go about things best for you. If they could learn that at this young age, the trials and tribulations and issues that they could potentially either avoid or have the capacity to deal with in a better situation and understand other people better too. But just as I was getting ready to pitch the school for an after-school club, the pandemic hit.
Oh, you're right.
Everything
when you said 2018, the first thing that came into my mind is, oh my God, right on the heels of the pandemic. I just want to put in very quickly too, that you're talking a bit ago about the children having more anxiety. And that's statistically the reality. The anxiety is through the roof on younger people today, especially young girls. And the amount incidences of self-harm reported in hospitals and things like that it's through the roof. It's very alarming.
Even in the school, I had one of the girls pull me out to tell me about a friend of hers who was self-harming. So I, of course, took the information to the administration, and the administrator responded to me, oh, who isn't these days?
Oh my God.
Yeah. I was shocked by that. And that did not sit well with me, which was another reason why I decided that I need to do something on my own. I'm not qualified. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a counselor. I am not a mental health professional. I do not try to take those things on. I strictly focus on the information from the strengths and a model that I developed, a self-intelligence model. And I follow that framework. That's my lane, and I stay in it. But I feel like those tools might help with some of the trauma and anxiety and reasons that kids might want to self-harm. Because what I learned from Eddie as well is one of the leading causes to depression and anxiety is thinking that we should be more like somebody else and less like ourselves.
Social media. Yep.
And even just parental pressure and school pressure, and the kids like comparing themselves to one another with their grades and everything else. It's just the pressure and expectations these days is just crazy.
Agree. And I think parents are just way too distracted too these days.
Yes.
There's not enough hands-on parenting.
I am so thankful that I did not have a smartphone when I was raising my kids.
Yeah. God.
I'm so thankful about that.
Right.
So,
I just want to, for a minute, share your site with the people that are actually watching. More people listen than watch. So we need to explain what we're looking at. I am impressed with your website in the way this is an introduction to what you are offering now, which you are just getting into.
Yeah.
And I'm impressed with the way you guide people through your website. And by the way, the website is feelempoweredeveryday.com. And you did a lot of work on this thing. I'm very impressed.
I must confess, I hired out a lot of work on this thing.
I'm sure you did.
I set my own up to begin with, and I struggled, and I would overthink, and deliberative is one of my bottom strengths, and our bottom strengths show up in our life just as much as our top strengths do. And I would overthink, and I would go on and change, and overthink and go on and change. And I feel like I was not getting my message across in a clear manner. So
it's clear now.
I found this absolutely amazing website. I don't know if I necessarily call her a website designer, but she's a branding, a branding coach. And oh my gosh, she was amazing and really helped me. And so I trusted, and I put it in her hands, and she spoke myself better than I could have spoken.
That's always the case. Even like someone like me designing my own logo is like pulling teeth. It's horrifying. Developing your own message. It's so hard because we're so clouded with our own BS. So if we could get some key points down and have someone else take a look at it, someone that's worthy of doing that kind of thing, it's so beneficial. And I got to tell you, Elle, I said this to you in an email like a week ago. When I was checking out your website, this is the most beautiful photo I've ever seen. You took this?
I took it in my backyard.
Somewhere Ohio, Southern Ohio.
Yes. So in my move to San Diego, like I said, I met somebody, and we recently moved from San Diego to Ohio. So now we're living in a small town back in the Midwest again. And this tree is in my backyard, and I really embraced the fall season after being away from it for a few years.
Well, this year, I swear to God, I've said it 100 times. It's the most beautiful. We had the most beautiful fall I ever remember. And, a big reason for that is Lisa, my partner, her favorite season is fall. And I would always be like, I can't get in the fall because I just know winter's right behind it.
Right.
But she taught me to stay in the moment of it. But her theory on it always was the only problem with fall is that there's always that one big windy storm that rips all the leaves off the trees.
Exactly.
And then it's over. We didn't really have that this year.
No. They stayed for a long time.
It was gorgeous. So was this taken just a few months ago?
Yep.
Oh, God. So anyways, for those of you listening, it's a beautiful perspective in composition of looking straight up a tree that is mostly predominantly yellow leaved, and the contrast between the bright, it's the perfect time of day that you took this, the way the leaves seem to be glowing against the organic trunk, the dark organic trunk. It's just absolutely beautiful.
Thank you.
But all the artisticness aside, let's get back to your messaging and how you got started.
And it's funny how you said a minute ago how we're all clouded, with our own BS. And that is the main message that I like to tell people is self-awareness is at the core, the foundation of my framework for self-intelligence. And we all see ourselves through a lens that is so smudged with everybody else's opinions, previous experiences, expectations, you name it. And what I do is I wipe away those smudges, and I give you clarity to who you are in your essence and how you do things best.
It's amazing. That's what I do with companies. So I do online marketing, and a big part of that is building a brand, is finding a company's best value propositions for their services and overall. And that is, what do they do uniquely? And I swear to God, I've been doing this for years. I try to get them in a state when I'm having a conversation with them, is if we're sitting at a bar, get them very relaxed and we're just talking like a couple of guys or a guy and girl, what have you. And that's when I start asking them about their passion. Why did they get started on this and all that? And Elle, I swear to God, that copy writes itself. You just take out all the swear words, and that's the copy. That's the copy, because that is their true passion and what they bring uniquely to the table. And I bet you can do the same thing with individual people.
Yes. I take all that away for them. And I've had people tell me as young as 13 to as old as, in their upper 60s, that I give them permission to be themselves. That's, and then the other thing too, is I go through two people's strengths side by side, all 34 traits. And I say, okay, here is where it lands for you. Here's where it lands for you. This is what it means. Helps reduce the frustration that we all have. That's I can't believe they do it like this. How come they think like that? This gives you the vocabulary to understand those things about each other.
Okay. So I don't feel like I've done a good job of guiding us from the beginning of this through where they're going to go. So I want to back up and just kind of say, how do people find you that gets started? And do you have maybe a freebie? Do you let them do the self-evaluation test on their own first? Is that how it starts? And then they have the option of contacting you and having a consultation or something like that?
They can. Well, I do a consultation with somebody first. We hop on the phone and have an actual conversation with one another, and then determine from there, if and what is the best course of action for them. And I do include the cost that Gallop charges to take the assessment in my program fee, but you are also more than welcome to take it on your own and then decide if you want me to go through it with you or not. If that's the case, I obviously take that amount off of the fee then. So however, it works best for people. I've done it both ways. I work with individuals ages 13 and up. I work with couples, like I said, couples meaning either like a relationship, parent-child in terms of parent-teenager.
Yeah.
And also coworkers. People are trying to build a business together, things like that, to just understand this is how I do things best. This is how you do things best. We can still come at the same, end point. We just are going to travel differently to get there. And that's not only okay, but that's actually going to serve ourselves and each other really well too. And we have to just learn what that looks like. I've gone through all three of my boys' strengths. And boy, do I wish I would have known this about them when they were teenagers, because it would have helped alleviate so many like minor irritations and big conflicts.
Yeah. That reminds me a lot about now. Lisa and I had done our own couples therapy too. And one of the most interesting things I learned about was that book, The Five Love Languages.
Yeah.
That was an eye opener to me, not just between her and I, but between me and my family, different members of my family, realizing, we all have the best of intentions, but we go there from different routes.
Right.
Some people express their love through acts of kindness, doing things for someone. Other people are verbal. I'm more verbal, and I wasn't understanding why somebody else didn't respond the same way. So there's a lot of that. So when you're dealing with different relationships, whether it's two people, a man and a woman in a relationship, or a son and a mother or something like that, you're still taking the strength assessment test and seeing where the personalities fall and then making sense of it from there. Is that correct?
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense.
So like you said about being verbal, so communication is one of the traits. So I've had a couple I've gone through and communication was like number 8 for one of them and number like 30 something, opposite ends of it.
That tells you a lot right there.
Right. So what I had to explain to them is, this one, when it goes in the head, it's going to come out of the mouth and they have to share everything. And they're going to be about stories and talking everything out and that whole thing. But this one is not going to tell you every single thing that happened in their day. They're not going to verbally share everything with you. And a lot of times the person who has communication high will find themselves saying to the person who has it low, what's wrong? What's wrong? What's wrong? How come you're not like, what's wrong? And
you just described Lisa and I. She's the high communicator. And I just kind of hit the highlights.
Yeah. And you're like, there's nothing wrong. I don't have to say everything. We don't have to talk about everything. They will connect with you on different ways that are your ways. Like empathy is one of the traits as well. And when you have empathy low, I let people know, first of all, it doesn't mean that you don't know how to be empathetic. Those are two different things. Okay. Empathy is where if you have it high, you kind of lead with everything is about sensing and feeling and taking on other people's and all that. If you have it low, no way. Your issues are your issues. Your feelings are your feelings. I don't need to take them on. I'm going to connect with you and understand you on a cognitive level.
So are you low empathy? Because you kind of described yourself like that earlier.
No, I have empathy number 3.
Okay, what is empathy number three?
That
Is it?
that's high.
Oh,
I
so
feel
then you
everything.
recognize that in yourself, and because you were talking about when you were doing the counseling, personal counseling with the kids earlier, that you're like, hey, I'm not getting in the weeds of your personal stuff. I just want the overview of things.
I'll feel it. I come home and I am gutted by things that these kids were going through. But what I meant by that is like when they take me out in the hallway to talk to me and they're like, so and so, so this, and da, 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 da. And I'm like, oh my gosh, are you real? You know, really? Like some adults even just like to get right in there with it. Even when my
Yeah,
kids
it's
would come
gossip.
home,
It's
right?
it's falling
No,
for
no,
gossip.
I
Yeah,
don't do that. I
yeah.
don't do that. But I'm going to feel your emotion and I'm going to be like, okay. And I also have restorative high, which means I'm a fixer. I want to like help you fix it. I have to come up with a solution for you.
Is that the mom in you? You think?
I think it's how I mothered.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
it's me as in who I am. But I think a lot of times that's how, and I had to realize too that, one of my kids has restorative high. So they probably, got that, understood it. We might have two different ideas of what those solutions might look like, but we're both focused. But if one of them has it low or lower, or even in the mid zone where it just kind of doesn't fuss you one way or another, still shows up. You're still going to use it in situations. You just don't thrive from it, or it doesn't like really pull you into a dark place. Your bottom strengths are what pull you into those dark places.
Okay, I'm going to get back to that.
Mhm.
But I just wanted to ask, okay, so isn't this fixer thing, isn't that a more masculine trait? Because us guys, we kind of eventually learn that we need to shut up and listen and stop trying to fix everything. So is that?
Again, it depends on what other strengths are around it. And this is
Mm,
this is my specialty. This is what I do. I help you really understand them according to your personal order, not in generalizations.
okay, okay.
I can give you a broad stroke idea of it
Mhm.
based on Gallup's, the Clifton's definition. But if you have restorative with empathy, you're more likely to like, I have to fix this. And a lot of times too, like I always tell people, there's bridges to every strength, but then there's tunnels to them too. So there's always things you have to be mindful. Just because it's in my top, just because I have restorative high and it's natural for me, doesn't mean that it's always, there aren't things I need to be mindful of, because a lot of times I have to learn to ask first. Do you want me to offer you a solution for this?
Oh, right.
Instead of just putting it on somebody else, because it makes me feel better for them to have a solution. I
Sure.
have to make sure I'm making it more about them
I'm
and not
telling you,
myself.
that's something almost every guy has to learn. I mean, seriously, because we just naturally look for solutions. And a lot of times, I mean, every psychologist knows that, is that most guys just need to learn to shut up and listen and to be very empathetic about offering a solution. To
But
do
again, I would say you need to go about it the way that honors you the best, because you can have restorative low in your bottoms and still be a fixer. Like I said, your bottom ones show up just as much as your
you got
top
to
traits
explain
do.
that. What are you talking about here? Restorative lows, the bottom stuff. What is all that?
Sorry.
No,
So
I'm terribly
yeah,
interested in this. I love
restorative
this.
is one of the traits.
Okay.
And when I say restorative low, so again, like I said, it ranks all 34 traits 1 through 34.
Mhm.
Your top 10 are how you do things best.
Oh,
That's where you come across things and you feel like you're in your zone,
okay.
right? Because it feels natural to you. You're, probably going to have good results from it. Like I said, there's things to be mindful of though in those top strengths too, to be
Okay.
careful of. It's not all about you, it's about other people. And that's part of my framework too. Self-management is the fifth step in my framework. So, but when I refer to the bottoms, that's when it shows up in either 30 through 34. And those bottom 5 are where you're trying to do what you think you should do. You're trying to be more like somebody else. You're frustrated by things, or that's where you go when you're doubting yourself. So if you have restorative in your bottoms, it shows up just as much as your tops, the bottoms do. It's just a mindfulness thing, because you might have a desire to fix so that you can just shut somebody up because you have no tolerance for negativity at all. You can't. You're just, I can't with this. So here's a solution, done, over it. That's usually coming at it if it's in one of your bottom strengths and you're like, this is totally stressing me out right now.
Yeah.
But if you have it in one of your top strengths, again, depending on what other traits are surrounding it, it usually comes from a place of, let's dig into this problem. Let's really dissect this problem, figure it out. And sometimes you even really hone in on the problem. And I feel like my restorative strength was really showing itself through the divorce process, because most people around me were probably like, I can't with her anymore with the negativity, because I had to dig myself so deep into the problem to understand it in order to feel good with the solution that I was actually searching.
I get that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't want you to stop. I don't want to interrupt you. I'm learning a lot right here. This is fascinating.
Yeah, thank you. It's been a life changer for me, for sure.
So how is that step number one for people to start working with you, is to take this personality assessment? Is it called a person?
It's the CliftonStrengths assessment.
Okay.
But step number one is for us to connect. I mean, unless you're like, you want to do it, then you can just reach out to me through my contact me page on my website. There's a form to fill out. You can, tick a couple of boxes so I know where you're coming from. And then, I send you an invoice. Once that's paid, I send you a code. You go on the Gallop website on your own time yourself. You take the assessment. It takes about 45 minutes to complete. You are timed on each question. You have about 20 seconds so that you don't overthink and try to do the right answer. Yeah. It may be frustrating because some of the questions may sound repetitive, but there is a method to the madness. And I mean, it's crazy how when I go through people's strengths, whether, like I said, I've gone through my kids and obviously I know them very well, to complete strangers. And they're like, I've never said these things to somebody else before. How do you know this about me? And so it just comes out through that. And then I get the results. All I need is the list. And then I do my own work behind the scenes. And I go through and I'm very diligent about, this means this for you. This means this for you. And I go through your top 10 and your bottom 5. And I give you examples and I don't want to say definition, but an explanation of each of those. And then what I do is I take all that information and I sort of give you like I put it all together of who this person is. And I tell you about yourself and your process of how you go about things best. Wow. It's not coaching because I don't ask you a million questions. I don't try to pull things out of you. I don't need to know about your deep, dark, secrets. I don't need to know about your childhood trauma. You're welcome to share anything with me you want, but I don't need that information in order to help you understand yourself. And so I believe that the assessment results in themselves is an unbiased look at our self-awareness, because as I mentioned before, that's too clouded for us to do it on our own. Yeah. If I try to, as a practitioner, learn about you and give you your self-awareness, I'm putting my bias into that.
Yeah, not to mention that you're getting a little bit of BS from the person that you're talking to.
Exactly. Exactly. So this is an unbiased look at your self-awareness. What I do then is I give you the self-understanding to what all that means.
Which you call self-intelligence on your website quite a bit.
The self-intelligence framework. And so the next step in that is this self-understanding, which is what I provide in the explanation, very personalized to your results. From there, we go into self-acceptance. How does all this information land for you? Do you accept it about yourself? I have so many clients, including myself, that like, what? With these strengths, like they need to come to grips with this. I was not happy with my number one strength at all. It was something I had been chastised for almost my entire life.
Oh, wow.
And I really struggled with coming to grips that was my.
So you got a lot of people that'll be in a sense of denial for a while, maybe even anger. because they're offended by what you're saying, and you got to work through that. And what
Yeah,
if you're wrong? What if you're
I
wrong?
haven't
What
really
if
had.
they answered something wrong? They answered something that just didn't, that wasn't right.
Well, that's why so many of the questions I think are kind of almost repetitive in a way, so
I
that
see.
they can get it right.
I
It's not
see.
just, oh, this number, 4 on the assessment.
Right.
I probably would have answered it differently. I've
Okay.
had somebody recently who she took it like in 2008, and then she just again took it now working with me.
Mm.
Almost all of the traits were not only the same in the top and the bottom, but almost in the same order. There were a few that moved around a little bit,
Wow.
but we are who we are,
Yeah.
and so we go through that self-acceptance, and then I take it to the next level, which is self-embracement. Not only do I accept this about myself, but you know what? I'm going to learn to really, I love this about me, and I really feel good about this is who I am, and this is how I do things best. And then comes the self-management. Now I have to realize that this is my list.
Mm.
Yours is something different. So even though I might be very task oriented and scheduled and everything has to be consistent, you might be kind of lollygaggy, just go with the flow. And there's nothing wrong with either one of us. It's just
Hmm.
different.
I totally get it. I like these last two steps that you're talking about, because I can see that if we have a certain segment of our life that we're just so terribly frustrated with, and oh my God, every other week I got to go through the same scenario, and it just hits me the wrong way. I can't get through it. And because you don't understand about your strengths and weaknesses, but when you do, you can come at something from a whole different, from your strength, and
Exactly.
find your solution to it. I
Yeah.
see this like, why isn't this being taught in schools to some degree?
Well, that's one of my goals. I would love to. In
Mm.
fact, I wrote a book. It's the Feel Empowered Everyday Bullet Journal, an interactive guide to
Oh, wait, I
building
gotta
your emotional
share.
intelligence.
I'm right there. I'm right there. Hang on there. And here we are.
Yes.
I'm
And
sorry to interrupt. You could buy it on
that's
Amazon.
okay. I actually formulated this all into a class that when I was still working at the school, because of the pandemic and all the lost learning, the school district was given extra money. So in the summer, they could offer free classes to the kids, and it could be on any subject. It didn't have to be the main academics. So I taught a Feel Empowered Everyday class to middle schoolers.
Oh, cool.
And I noticed that some of my students in there were taking notes in bullet journal form. They had the different colored pens, they were doodling, they were, adding a bunch of stuff to it, and they were just taking down the main premise of what I was, talking about. And it really inspired me. Like, we all have such short attention spans these days.
Yes.
Nobody wants to sit down and read and read. And I mean, we even have like apps like Headway now to give us the Cliff Notes versions of books.
Yeah, that's awful.
So I'm like, why spend my time writing all this stuff out? I am going to make it more of a bullet journal. So it's very interactive, it's very colorful. Um,
Oh, cool.
I
Did,
give,
did my screen turn to
yep,
the Amazon?
yep,
Okay,
it's to
cool.
Amazon. Yep. I offer, I think that one just shows the front and the both the covers.
Probably, right.
But there is
Probably.
a little video that I put on there too that I kind of flip through the I don't know,
I don't see it.
maybe if you scroll down, it might be,
Videos.
yeah.
Upload your
Oh
video.
no. Okay,
Okay.
maybe it didn't go on there
And
yet.
folks, for those of you listening, I just went to her Amazon page where the book is offered. And so it's very interesting. If you get a chance to just pop over to YouTube and see some of this, I think Elle is offering some very, very important stuff for all of us.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. So I broke it down to bite size, and I give empowerment strategies on each one of the steps of self-intelligence. And yeah, so I'm hoping also that this book, oh, excellent. There we go. There's a little bit of
Yeah,
it.
I happened upon a look-see, a little peek inside of the contents here. And it's a
Good.
really well-designed book. It's put together very well that it will keep you riveted. It's not boring, I'll say that.
That was my intention, is to, but there's a lot of nuggets in there, just very practical ways of going about things in life, as well. And my 23-year-old son couldn't put it down. And
Nice.
my kids are used to listening to me spout off about all this kind of stuff. In fact, he was going through something and I said, you know what? You should hop on my YouTube channel and listen to one of my webinars. And he said, Mom, my whole life has been a webinar from you.
Oh, that's funny. Hey, what is your YouTube channel?
It's Feel Empowered Every Day.
Oh, okay, that makes sense, especially since your website is, as I recall, feelempoweredeveryday.com, right?
Yep.
Cool.
Exactly.
And I'll put these links in the show notes, so don't worry about it, guys.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So I'm hoping to get either the book itself or a program in some of the schools where I am teaching this. As you see there, I also have a podcast, and that's just sort of me spouting off my thoughts.
I'm guessing that it's called Feel Empowered Every Day.
Exactly.
Nice.
Nice.
So you do it all by yourself without guests?
I do. It is just, they're fairly short, and it's almost like a verbal journal where something that maybe I saw on social media or something, an experience that I just had or whatever, that has made an impact on me. I just go on and kind of talk about it. I'd like it to be more interactive where, I offer, if somebody has an opinion about what I'm saying or anything like that, to reach out to me. I'm all about conversation. That's why I love doing these podcasts so much.
Well, you're really good at it. You're a good communicator, and I really like what you're offering. I find this absolutely fascinating. And I'll just say again, this stuff should be taught in schools, like in a really elementary type level. I don't mean elementary school. I mean a more beginner type level, so people can warm up to it.
Exactly.
Well, just the common sense part of it right off the top of my head is just teaching people that, hey, people come at things differently. We are different. We're the same, but we're different. And so when you can understand each other, you can work out problems a lot better together.
Right. And it's funny, like, and when you have the vocabulary of the strengths, it's funny how that can play into, my oldest son and his fiance were in the process of buying a house, and the first house they put a bid on fell through. Well, my core strength is connectedness, which means that I'm all about, like, everything happens for a reason. It's all meant to be. Yeah. So I'm like, okay, guys, I'm putting my connectedness on you right now.
And they know what you're talking about.
Everything happens for a reason. Yeah. That's my core. That's where I come from. This is what you guys might not have this high for yourself. So use a little bit of mine right now to help you get through this.
I'm right there with you.
Logical and pragmatic and, that type of thing. I'm like, trust me in this process. And sure enough, they found a house that was so much better and it worked out and they're loving it. So I'm not always right, but I at least needed to share that. But it's kind of fun when you do have that vocabulary to understand each other. And then it gives you that commonality to be able to be like, oh, wait, I'm calling you out on this one right now.
Yeah. What would be kind of cool is if, you're delivering a lot via these podcasts like you are right here, but perhaps in the future, if you did an audio book. And just, explain all of this process and give people this vocabulary.
Right.
Yeah. It would be a terrific introduction to your then further in-depth counseling, if counseling is the right word.
I am working on my second book right now, call it Becoming Elle, because I was always known as Shelley for my entire life until just a few years ago.
Yeah.
And so I call it Becoming Elle, a self-intelligence memoir. And so I'm sort of documenting my process of going through and learning self-intelligence through everything that you and I talked about on this podcast, and then also diving deeper into the self-intelligence process.
That's cool.
So maybe once I complete that, I'll put an audio version too.
Yeah. Well, and I say audio because everybody's gotten, not everybody, a lot of people have gotten very adapted to walking around with like me, walking around with earbuds in, listening to podcasts. And so therefore I've conditioned myself. I cannot tether myself to a book. If it's not on audio, if it's not on audio, I've done this. I find ways to make that robot in my phone read that PDF to me, that
Right.
book to me. Yeah. So, yeah. So I strongly encourage everybody to do audio versions of their books.
Yeah,
In that day
you're
and age.
right. That is, I'm still paper and pen and underline with pencil.
Are you? Yeah, that's
And then
funny.
I go back through my notes and I plug them into my blog. So then I have my quick condensed version of, what I want to remember from the book. But
Nice.
I'm still there, but you're right. A lot is audio these days for sure.
Do you have a vision of how you're going to continue to evolve, or are you liking where you're at and just want to continue helping people on a more individual basis?
I want to help people on a more individual basis, but I'm all about that part of it growing as well. I'm in the present type person. So I'm in this moment now. I try not to set too much ahead of where I want to see things go, because once I do that and I have it all pinned down, then inevitably something's going to come along and shift my gear.
Yeah.
So, but I'm all about growth. I'm all about getting this message out to as many people as possible. But I do like the direct connection with people one-on-one. I prefer to do it like that right now rather than try to put something out for the masses.
Yeah.
And because again, the explanation of it all is so personalized, I don't want to get into generalizations because that means something different for each person.
That's very true. It's very true. All right. What do you say that we wind this podcast up? If you had any other gems to throw out, I'm all ears. But I feel like we got a good explanation here.
We did. And if you do hop to that website that you told everybody about, feelempoweredeveryday.com, I do have a download on there, which is the top tips to self-empowerment.
Top tips to self-empower. Oh, I was looking for it. I can't find it.
Life-changing tips to self-empowerment. It's on the home page toward the bottom.
Nice. Well, there's the top of your funnel, folks. So check that out. I got to tell you, I think what you're doing is fascinating. And I'm really glad that you came on here. Happy to share this with everyone.
Thank you. And thank you for having me. And I am a champion for life is amazing after 50.
Oh, same here.
It's what you make it.
And like I said, we all have a degree of experience, intelligence, and maybe a few bucks put together that we should be doing what we want to do with our lives from here.
Yeah. Don't be afraid to explore yourself.
That's the key. That's the key. Overcoming our fears. Right. Right. Yeah. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll be reaching out to you via email soon, and I hope to get this out this afternoon.
Sounds good. Thanks.
All right. Take care.
You too.